It could happen, you know. It did happen in the 1920s in Germany. After World War I, when all the powers of Europe forced the Germans to surrender, and they punished Germany terribly for starting the war. Actually, for losing the war is what they were punishing them for, but anyway. They blamed the start of the war on Germany, and they punished them terribly, and the result was that the mark, the German currency, lost all of its value. You could spend 2 billion marks to buy a loaf of bread, and the day after that it would be 4 billion marks. What happened? When the center of the German economy fell apart like that, it created a major crisis. And someone emerged in the midst of that crisis saying, I am He. Follow me and I will bring meaning back to our nation. Follow me and I will make our nation great again. I am the new Messiah for the nation of Germany, and his name was Adolf Hitler. And people followed him. Even the Christians followed him. That's what it means. The time when there is that moment of crisis, that moment of decision, when you have to remember whether you're a Christian or not. There were a certain number of people who did remember that they were Christians, and they challenged Hitler, and many of them were arrested, and many of them were killed and persecuted, and they were brought before judges and magistrates, and they were condemned. But they held fast to the faith, and ultimately they were vindicated because Hitler turned out to be a false Messiah. He was destroyed, and now we look back on that handful of Christians who had the faith to hold, the courage to hold fast to the faith with admiration, and we hope that we would be the same as they in a similar crisis. We are facing a similar crisis today, you know. I was watching Bill Moyer's show Now the other day, and they had an economist on. I think it's about the third economist that he's had talking about the national debt that we have today. Officially, our national debt is something between $2.5 and $4.3 trillion. But in fact, our national debt is much greater than that, because when people my age, the baby boomers, start to retire, we're going to start laying claim to things like our Medicare and our Social Security and so forth, and the national debt will go to something like $50 trillion. The only way that's going to be paid is if our children have their taxes raised by some 500% or more. Are they going to stand for that? No. How will we pay it? What's going to happen is the dollar will lose its value. There will be conditions, much like there were in Germany in the 1920s, right here in this country. And what are we going to do when people start saying, I am He, follow me, I will make everything better, I will restore the greatness of our nation. And they will call for wars, and there will be rumors of wars, and there will be chaos. And the challenge to us is, will we remain faithful to Jesus Christ, or will we chase after those false messiahs? That is what the time means. It's not a date. It's a set of conditions. That's the first part of my sermon. It's already getting pretty long, isn't it? Sorry. The second part of my sermon is about the name that Jesus predicts. You will be persecuted on account of my name. You will be brought before judges and magistrates and kings, and you will be tried and persecuted and hated because of my name. Now, what does that mean? Because of my name. Because it means that we're believers. But what sort of believers does it mean? In what sense is it that we believe in His name? Does it mean, I think that there are only two choices. One is, we trust in His name enough to obey His word. The other one is, we claim His name in order to be victorious with Him. because of what we get out of it. We trust in His name enough to obey His word, or we claim His name in order to have His victory for ourselves. Now, when we want His name in order to have victory for ourselves, that's like when the disciples said to Jesus, grant us to sit one at your right side and one at your left in your glory. That's what we want, Jesus. Will you give us that? And He says, you don't know what you're asking. Because His glory is His crucifixion, isn't it? You got His right and His left side, and that two terrorists who are crucified, one on either side of Him. You don't know what you're asking, He says to them. They don't understand who He is. It's also like when Jesus asked them, who do you say that I am? And Peter says, you are the Messiah. And Jesus says, well, you're right about that. Now you must understand that I'm going to be arrested, and I'm going to be tortured and persecuted and killed, and after 3 days rise again. And Peter said, no, that can't happen to you. You're the Messiah. And Jesus says to him, get behind me, Satan. You're not thinking as God thinks, you're thinking as man thinks. What you are, you're claiming my name in order to have a piece of victory with me. You're not claiming my name in order to obey my word, in order to obey my commandments. What are His commandments? His commandments are, love the Lord your God with all your heart and mind and soul and strength. Right? Love your neighbor as yourself. Turn the other cheek. Give generously to anyone who asks without expecting in return. In other words, be peacemakers. Don't be going after some kind of military, messianic victory. What Jesus represents is something other than what the world understands. How else to say it? There was a cartoon movie that came out about 10 years ago called The Iron Giant. How many of you saw that movie? Did you see The Iron Giant? It was a story about a little boy who discovers this giant robot that has fallen to Earth from outer space or someplace, and it has tremendous powers. And one of the great things about having this Iron Giant for his friends is all the bullies in the neighborhood that always picked on him now are scared to death of him because he has the Iron Giant behind him. And we love that kind of story. You know, the bad guys that are bullies, they're finally going to lose because we got a bigger bully on our side. And we think that's wonderful because finally righteousness is winning out and the bad guys get there. The trouble is that every bully believes himself to be on the side of righteousness in one way or another. That's one of the ways they convince themselves that it's okay to be a bully, is that they're right, so they can bully whoever they want.